It's the golden age of being a dork. It's not uncommon now for a 60-year-old to have a favorite Pokemon, or a 10-year-old to have a favorite Star Trek captain. Almost every weekend of the year in the United States and in many other countries, nerds have the opportunity to congregate together in mutual celebration of things that they love. And this commonly gets called a ComicCon. But over the years, these events have grown massively and now are much less about comic and much more about the con in every sense of the word. Conventions are big business, bigger than ever, and that's forcing changes into conventions that I think changes these things for the worse. And many of you agree with me. Money is ruining your fandom, and the only thing keeping it afloat also. Stick around. I'm Dan Upton, and this is the Doomcast. Hey, thanks a lot for checking this out. Do me a favor and hit subscribe and the bell. I make about one of these videos a week. They're all great, so don't miss even one of them. Also, big shout out to my friends at comicshell.com for hooking me up with this slick graded comics travel case. From ComicShell, it holds both graded and 14 bagged and boarded comics, or 8 top loaders, and it makes them easy to bring to things like conventions without fear of damage in a sleek, heavy nylon case like this with pockets and also a center pad. It's essential, and it made my convention going experience this year at C2E2 much smoother, getting comics in and out for signing and transporting some of the collectible comics that I purchased. It retails for $34.99 at thecomicshell.com, but I've got one to give away free as long as you like and comment on this video on either YouTube and Facebook, any one of these videos this month. And at the end of the month, I'll pick a winner at random and send it to you. In the contiguous United States, I can ship pretty much anywhere. Outside of the US, if you do win, you might have to pay for shipping. Thecomicshell.com and the Comic Shell on Facebook and Instagram. Okay, like I said, it's the golden age of geekdom. I love Comic Cons because it's Pride Fest for the straights, kind of, and cosplay is drag for straight people, I guess. I'm kidding, but there is some truth there. Anyone can be who they want to be and love what they want to love for a day or a weekend. And traditionally that's comics. Of course, Star Wars and Star Trek had their own conventions as well. But somewhere along the way, Comic-Con became a catch-all for anything specifically geek or nerd culture. Comics and sci-fi were natural partners, but as video games and manga started appearing, they got folded in the early 80s and later. Likewise, pro wrestling in the 90s. Pro wrestling was itself the purveyors of major weekly events nationwide, and that kind of seems like a no-brainer as well, right? I started going to meet writers and artists of comics specifically. It's important to note that my first con was Wizard World in 2003 in Chicago. And that's probably a good place to start examining comic conventions and their rapid change over the last 20 years. Because that con was founded in 1972 by a school teacher and collectible dealer named Nancy Warner. Now, originally, it was called Nostalgia 72 and eventually became Chicago Comic-Con, but in 1997 that convention was purchased by magazine publisher Wizard, which eventually shifted its focus from publishing at all in 2011 to strictly running conventions. Of course, by 2015, Wizard scaled back from the 25 shows that it was running to 16 and then eventually to 13. By 2021, it sold its remaining conventions to Fan Expo, a division of the British publishing, intelligence, and exposition conglomerate, Informa. Of course, in 2010, Chicago got a new con in the form of ReedPop's C2E2. In an article from the Chicago Reader by Deanna Isaacs in April of 2010, she writes about Wizard World Chicago and the new C2E2, quote, "Aficionados and dealers I've talked to suggest that this is a fight over the very nature of a comic book convention, triggered by the encroachment of a broader nerd culture that embraces pro wrestlers and TV kitsch to the detriment of the art form the purists love." Telling, as this is the self-same trap of encroachment of nerd culture that has swallowed C2E2. Of the guests this year, fewer were mainstream comic creators than prior years. However, they welcomed 9 anime voice actors and 34 actors and wrestlers, including the main cast other than Ben Savage of famously comic book related show Boy Meets World. And on top of the $100 passes and inflated hotel costs, meeting some of these people, like Chris Evans, who played Captain America, cost fans of up to $250 for a 5-second or less photo op. All of this is to say that the long road that almost all major comic conventions have seemingly fallen into is that it's more about the con now than the comics. Most of them are owned by large publicly traded companies like Informa and Relx, the parent company of ReedPop, another British research, intelligence, and publishing conglomerate, which is to say that these monster fucking companies do not give a shit about what you enjoy at all. What it means to you as a fan, they could care less, or whether it's about anything in particular at all, it's just about getting money and getting you to go. So if that means that there's a fraction of the comic guests that were there because more people want to meet Catherine Newton or the cast of Our Flag Means Death or the lady that voiced Naruto, then too bad for you. Relx makes only 11% of its £2.6 billion revenue on conventions. Why would they care what you're there for? They just care that you're there and spending money. Which isn't to say that fandom isn't already a product sold to people. It certainly is, from comics to games to TV to movies, it's all business, but the heart and authenticity is what gives that art traction and makes it resonate with people. If it does at all, C2E2 went from having all the major comic book publishers in 2019 to having absolutely no major comic book publishers in 2023, from mostly comic guests to mostly anything else in 2023. The cast of Boy Meets World. And I do kind of take issue with legacy old school geeks beefing with conventions appealing to normies, though I do want these things to keep happening. And I'm sure that part of the difficulty in getting some of the guests that I like to see is due to some of the oversaturation in it. Everybody can't be everywhere, right? And not every weekend. But making new fans is what it should always be about, and conventions are a great place to discover new stuff, so I do want them to be fun for everyone. And I hate seeing gatekeeping in conventions. But I do want to see every part of that fandom robustly represented, especially comic books. But these shows have become far too reliant on geek TV or non-geek TV and movies, the popularity of which is incredibly fickle. However, for now, I hope they continue and I hope the bottom doesn't fall out. But I do hope they return to their roots in sequential art. Thanks everybody for watching. This has been the Doomcast. We'll see you next week.